So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining today's session. In today's webinar, we'll be discussing the topic, how content management makes your daily work easier. Just some housekeeping. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll answer them as we go through different questions. And then also at the very end as well, if we run out of time, we'll reach out to you personally and provide you with some in-depth answers. So in this webinar, we are covering the effectiveness of your document management system. And really its different core components. So the first poll question that we had there was a lot of interest from the crowd in regards to the checklist of the core components. So Gio and Tom will go through the different things that you should be observing in regards to what you have within your organization. The other content that we'll be covering today is really how common everyday collaboration and compliance challenges are directly related to your content management. And the other thing that we'll be discussing is the very topical impact of the new normal and the critical role that content management plays in your hybrid or your remote workforce. Okay, in the next slide, you'll just see a little summary there of just what I've kind of run through the agenda. And in the next slide again, is a lovely little introduction in regards to who we're joined with today. So in today's session, we're joined by our two industry experts. We have Thomas Munro, a consultant and records management specialist at ELO Digital Office, one of our newest strategic partners with powerful enterprise content management technology. Tom is our RM guru. When I say RM, I'm referring to records management. And he has experience in implementation of ELO EDRMS at the Victorian Institute of Forensic Medicine. And he's previously worked at EY, City of Melbourne and Swinburne Uni. Giovanni Ferrero is our Senior Intelligent Information Management Consultant with over 15 years experience on ECM. For me and also for our customers, he's a trusted advisor and also big in the industry with a master's in Information and Knowledge Management from UTS. And he's also actually currently working on a doctoral candidate and a researcher with UTS investigating the information practices of scientists. So welcome, gentlemen. Jumping straight in, the first topic that I'd like to discuss really is starting at foundational stuff in regards to what is content management. I might loop you in, Gio, to kick it off with the definition.
Yeah, not a problem. Thank you, Lieti. And perhaps to begin, one of the first things that document management and content management is when we're referring in this specific seminar, we're referring to the unstructured content that is managed within the processes and informations within organization. So how do we manage that? And in the practice of information management as a discipline, we sometimes refer to them in the specific for this seminar in document management and record management. So document management, you could think of it like managing the unstructured content of the organization while is active, while they is current within the process of the organization and that intellectual property of the organization is being created. And for that, we sometimes tools comes with a lot of tools in order to manage that content. And then we have an extra layer called record management, under which we manage the life cycle of that information from creation until disposal in order to keep the corporate memory of the organization and to be in compliance with regulations. Now, one thing that I would like to make clear is that in many organizations, there is the assumption that in order to solve these problems to manage information, we need to use technology. And that is true, but it's not the 100% true. So we need to implement technology because technology is an enabler to do something like version control or search information. But information, it also relates to human beings. So it also relates to the information needs and the information behavior of the organization. So it is in information management, it is the combination of the tools, but also the information practices and policies in order to understand your information ecosystem, to make sure that the tool that you deploy, it is effective and efficient in solving the information needs of your organization.
And if you just want me to add to that, Gio, that's a really thorough explanation. So the only thing I can add to that is my own little version of that, which dumbs it down a bit. So to me, document management is about efficiency. It's concerned with the document while it's in development, the tools which allow the users to collaborate and track the development of the document. Records management, to me, is more concerned with compliance. What happened and when, the evidence, the record does not change. So basically, staff need the documents to do their job, and they need the records to prove they did their job.
Thanks, guys. So I'm just going to get another poll question to pop up on your screens. This poll question is, the answers in there are quite interesting in regards to, we have one option in there that's half-half. Tom, I might lean on you in regards to explaining an example or a scenario in which a customer might have started their records management or be halfway through.
Thanks. You know, when I first thought about this, I didn't think there was such a thing as a half-half solution. But then on reflection, I realized, you know, I've encountered several organizations who have maybe a standard document management system, which they call their record system, but it's not quite compliant with any record standards. You know, they may simply have an open text metadata field on a folder to indicate the date in which all the contents of that folder can be destroyed, but it's lacking any reference to how this folder has been classified, or there might not be any other controls on the folder. For example, a function which could turn that collection of documents into a read-only state so that the record cannot be tampered with. So I guess that's an example of what a half-half system could be, one which may have all the DM functions, but only a few features which relate to the rules around record retention.
Yeah, if I can pitch in just a second there, I have also seen that in my experience, in which sometimes we implement a system and the organization implement a system with a certain picture of the information needs that they have. And one example I have is that through the years, the organization evolved, the information needs and requirements and perhaps regulations evolved, and then new people come into the organization and they don't really know what is the actual or original picture of why those security models or that implementation was, what was the reason for that. And yesterday, nonetheless, I was advising a client in which a technical error ended up being actually a security level. And the fact is that the business couldn't take a decision right in there and how to change that security level because they didn't know the drivers under which that was implemented in the first place. So it is important that organization as a social beings, they change and evolve through the years. And your information needs to evolve in order to address those new realities. So
just following on from that, in regards to the evolving nature of businesses and how people staff in those systems as well as each other, collaboration is obviously a critical function for organizations, and how that is facilitated varies across industries and also organization sizes. To you both, what are common challenges, that businesses face that are sometimes overlooked, ignored, or they're accepted as a normal part of the role of the business, but really it's actually hindering collaboration? I'll probably go out to you, Tom, in regards to what you're seeing or what your thoughts are on that.
The main challenges I'm seeing around collaboration are probably, to begin with, the end users being overwhelmed by choice at the moment. You know, do I put this information in the network drive, SharePoint, the Teams collaboration area, the EDRMS? Should I email a copy of it to all 10 people who I need to collaborate on it? Does it go directly into our CRM or a case management system? And should I keep a copy of it, a personal copy of it on my own desktop? All these things lead to a kind of decision fatigue or option paralysis type scenario where we end up becoming less efficient and more stressed. And the uncertainty is understandable for these end users if they haven't had a clear explanation of maybe the purpose of each tool and what information should be stored in each. Another thing is duplication across different systems and in various locations within each system. That's another challenge. And we've all experienced the nightmare of network drives. The same document saved 50 times across multiple network drives. And so what are we working on, folks? And then I suppose with collaboration comes compliance challenges. And one main issue here that I find is often organizations don't actually have the internal resources to understand all the areas of records compliance. And I see that the responsibility often gets handballed unfairly to somebody who does not have the expertise in that area.
Yeah, no, that's great, Tom. But perhaps also the fact that people interact within business processes with information. So information is required, right? So we're going to produce information, but that doesn't mean that we actually managing the information efficiently in order to make those process and those business process efficient, right? So one of the things that happens sometimes in terms of collaboration is that people know how to do their work for 10, 15, 20 years. They have been doing the work, and they kind of have developed their own information management system. And one of those difficulties is when they go, that information or intellectual property might be lost because either it's in a local computer and a network, and the people, by working through that information every single day, they know how to get to it, but not necessarily everybody else does. So what happens is if I come new or somebody else needs it, sometimes what we do is because we don't have indexing, we don't have a search, we don't have a security perhaps to access where the information was created, what we're gonna end up doing is just recreating the wheel, recreating stuff. We cannot find it, we just created it again, start every single time. And the fact is not that in the middle of you producing what you are good at, let's say creating printers or sneakers, you're going to create information. But if you could make the people who actually could benefit of that information participant of what you have created, your processes are going to move more efficiently.
Thanks, guys. I think that's a very good point, Gio, in regards to we're seeing like the great resignation right now with people moving, some just retiring, and then we're experiencing that there is definitely a loss of IP with them exiting or changing businesses or job roles and everything. One thing as well, actually, this is related, you'll see a poll question pop up, and this will be the final poll question for the session. But one thing that we also are seeing in Honeycomb and Alta transitioning away from is collaboration on network drives. So network drives is the poll question that we have here. Do you still struggle with that in your organization? Are you in a transitionary nature right now in regards to moving away from network drives? This one's an important question, which we'll allude to in the upcoming discussion point, because of it's something that we see is people use as a band-aid historically in regards to resolving the central repository for all the information, and then everyone can access it easily, but it does present some content management and records management issues. Just while we wait for a few more minutes for participants to complete that poll, I might go to you, Gio, just to follow on in regards to what you see are the key components of document and records management.
Yeah, Leah. So document management comes historically when the industry went from mainframes to actually workstations and on the desktop. So people started to work on the same document and they lost track of who did which edition and which was the latest. So we need to come up with a system in order to understand and organize more than one people working in the same set of information. And that's how document management came about. So one of the basic components of document management at a basic level would be your check-in, check-out, your version control, your search engine, your index engine, the fact that you could actually organize that information into a taxonomy, right? A taxonomy is a folder hierarchy in which you could actually fit that information according to some categories. I mean, it is basic stuff, but is how people get into an agreement. And in so many circles in information management and record management, taxonomy is called an ontology, because in reality is a reflection on the business and how they do actually interact with the information. What is it that they do? One of the simple things is that you could see that taxonomy and you could understand what the business is doing, and that should be natural to either to the function or to the business units. So as a basic component, those are the things that you could put. But then you could overlay on top of that things like workflow or reporting, and then you go from there to analytics. But you start with the basic and your foundation, which is your taxonomy, your security model, your metadata model. You bring the whole organization into an agreement, and how do we manage information to make ourselves more efficient. And I think perhaps Tom is gonna join in that in how does look from that record management perspective.
Thanks, Gio. I suppose for me, the key components of records management starts with, I suppose you'd have a base. So you've got three elements of that. You'd have your business classification scheme. You'd have perhaps a table of all the disposal codes which are relevant to the functions of your organization, and then some mapping between the two. So, you know, this particular disposal code is applicable to these 2 or 3 branches of your BCS. So that would be, I suppose, the initial components. If we progress to talk about functions of an ADRMS as a component, then I would start listing off things like, you know, the ability to close off a set of documents into something which I always refer to as a file container, you know, turn it into a read-only state to protect the evidence of the activity from being edited. You know, you can perhaps having a set of rules automatically applied to the file container to dictate how long we must keep it for. Another component would be some sort of administrator ability that they could reopen the file container if need be. You could talk about legal holds functions, and then of course the end of the life cycle, the function to actually dispose of the record. So I guess from my understanding, that's what the components of records management would be.
So with these components in this checklist, in an enterprise space, such as like industries with mining specifically or construction and telecommunications, do they require document management and records management? Because we see it a lot in government, but is it still as important for enterprise businesses?
My short answer is yes, and it's just worth noting that in my experience, it's mostly been easier to set up and maintain a records management system within a more corporate environment as opposed to public sector. Why? Well, several reasons, but one is that private organizations are not tied to the somewhat over-engineered disposal rules set up by state records offices. You know, one big private company I worked for had a really beautifully simple 4 or 5 page disposal schedule, which they developed over time with input consultation from legal team, records team, and SMEs across the business. And the result of that was a framework for classifying records which non-record staff were able to operate within. They could easily understand it, and it didn't hinder their daily routine. So yeah, just as important.
Yeah, no, definitely. If you produce information, if you have human agents interacting with such information, well, I think it'll be in the benefit of the organization to know how to manage it. See, we've been in a transition. This is a digital transformation, right? We used to physically interact with the information. We know where our records were in the compact room, in the basement, color coded in a folder, right? Manila folder. And now everything is digital. It's more ethereal, right? It's more sui generis. You know that it's there, but not quite exactly understand where is it and how to manage it and how to find it. Now, I would say the argument is that is more necessary than ever, because now that everything is digital, it's very important that you know where your information is, how you manage it via attributes, how you categorize it, how you are able to pull it back, or how you're able to report and reuse it. Now, this information becoming digital, you have the opportunity to reuse it, to re-understand how your business has progressed through time. Is this only for government organizations in the case of record management? I think Tom is completely right. I mean, we do have under record management obligations certain capacities in order to understand how we manage corporate memory and that we are reliable to the public, that we, for example, need to have a disposal authority or a government general authority for disposal of records. But as a minimum in the private sector, you will still need to manage your life cycle of your information, and you have certain requirements in terms of employment, employee files, and some other type of files in which you are required to hold it for a certain amount of time. Now, holding information is not managing information. Whatever you hold, you maintain, and you are responsible for. So having that good strategy in how to manage your information not only makes you efficient, but it makes you accountable to stakeholders.
Just in regards to, obviously, enterprise, they'll have different systems in place where they use information or share information and collaborate. With those systems, if they don't currently have any records management applied, is that something that's quite a complex task to overlay or apply records management to the existing infrastructure? I'll probably put that to you, Tom.
So you're asking about the complexity of basically, if you've not got the RM rules on top. Look, you can it can be made simple, and if you take it in small achievable chunks, you know, if you keep in mind the perfect is the enemy of the good, as I always remind myself, you take it in manageable chunks. Don't try and plot out the entire thing from the start, because you won't know half the problems you're going to encounter on day one until you start, you know, pick one area of the business, HR, maybe finance, and start tackling their areas and classifying what information they have and helping them work within a structure that's going to be compliant, and just take it chunk at a time, get a few successes and use that to demonstrate to the more difficult teams that you're going to have to bring on. But if you think you're going to start on day one and master it all, you're going to fail.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, Tom. And the strategy in the 80s and 90s, I think in beginnings of the 2000s, I think it was big bang approach. And this will take forever, and because the organizations are always evolving, by the time you finalize and do that big bang approach, you almost need to reevaluate it. This is a dynamic stuff. Organization change quickly. Just look at the last couple of years, last 2 years, the whole thing have progressed immensely, and we are in a completely different reality. And the fact that we organize our information just make us more flexible in order to react to these disruptions as they occur. But in that specific case, I think some people said, oh, well, I'm just going to manage my documents and I'm just going to manage my records. But it's actually beyond that. That is your foundation in order to make you more digital, more native into this digital reality. And one of the things that you could start instead of big bang is progressive improvement. You take areas in which you, for example, identify a process. You identify a process like contract management or employee file, and you start by that process by digitizing that process. You find a process that you have a lot of paper. How are you managing that now that your workforce is distributed across their homes, right? They still need to do it. Well, they do it via PDF, but that doesn't mean that you are digitally managing the record. It just means that you converted something that it was physical into a PDF, which is a digital version, but you know handling. So do you have workflow? Do you have audit trail? Do you have reporting into that? And then you use that in order to make the process more efficient. Then you start like something like that, let's say like a contract management. You have your repository, you have your lead application, leading the metadata and the database, and that's how you start little by progressive improvement.
Something I just want to refer to as well was the earlier poll question in regards to there was 70% of the people that completed the poll said actually they still today struggle with network drives. And something I often hear when I'm interviewing customers or going out on customer visits is they're struggling with network drives, but they have SharePoint right now. So they are under the impression that that is their documents and records management fix or solution. So I might loop you in here. Is this something that is you're seeing, and also is that a suitable fix for those that are struggling with network drives?
I'm hearing this a lot these days. The So I could tell a little anecdote that over the last 10 years or so, I've gone into a lot of different organizations and different roles. And one of the big problems I've been asked to help out with is the network drive problem. I mean, it's been there 10, 15, 20 years, and you've got all this duplication and people can't get away from it. And you chip away and you chip away and you make progress. And what I'm seeing is just the same problem is now going to occur in SharePoint because there's no controls. There are some bolt-on tools which promise to give those controls and compliance, but I'm still predicting in the next 5 to 10 years, there's going to be people knocking on my door saying, "Hey, Tom, can you come help clean up our SharePoint?" Because it's going to be the exact same problem that I've seen in network drives. So if you don't have set controls over what goes where, or if people have got free reign to create endless libraries and whatever, you're going to get the same issue you had in your network drives eventually. Does that answer what you were asking for?
Yeah, so it's just moving the problem from on your PC or on the network drive to SharePoint.
I might even say that sometimes you even exacerbate the problem, because now, before you needed to manage the network drives, now you have a big bucket container called SharePoint. Now, the problem is not the tool. In reality, I mean, the tool is as useful as the people who actually organize the information. There are some tools that are allows to do some things better than other one. Like, for example, in the case of ELO, the record management capability is supremely robust. But what happened is that people have the conscience that they have SharePoint, end up using it as a big bucket container that in reality had no strategy in order to manage their security model or the metadata model. So it in effect works as a network drive as well. So do you have that? And perhaps this is not something that comes natural within the organization to have the information management expertise. It's something that perhaps you need a little bit of guidance and consultancy in order to understand which is my information strategy, how my information ecosystem looks, which are my needs and my behavior, in order to reflect that into the tool. Then you use the tool for what the tool is for, right? You use the hammer in order to hit the nail and not to do something else.
Yeah, so in the modern workplace, obviously we're seeing SharePoint use and everything, but also we're seeing hybrid working, remote working become the new normal. What role does records management and document management play in this new normal? Or rather, how can organizations that might struggle with network drives or are adapting use document and records management to their benefit?
Well, in relation to that, I'm starting to see those old issues of the duplication issue become prominent again within environments where I had seen great progress made. You know, the flip to working from home has been an enabler for bad habits, I think. You know, for example, staff members taking local copies of documents to work on, and the excuse will often be, "Oh, look, it's just easier for me to work on my home computer because of the stress of logging into the organization's VPN," or something like that. And before too long, you've got lots of copies of that document in various states on different people's computers, and then whoever has to bring that together has a real challenge on their hands. And what's my solution? I think it's the huge part of it is an educational or behavioral thing. So it'd be tools to educate and train and take away the anxiety of using certain technology, things like that, and keeping within, giving the reasons for we've got to do it this way, because once we start doing it that way, you feel like it's easier, it's 30 seconds less stress for you, but then we've got this bigger problem down the track.
Yeah, so my question in that case, Liette, would be, had the fact that we are now in a hybrid work modality, or that we have a distributed workforce, had made managing information easier now that is digital and that everybody's in their own home or different places? And I think the answer is no. I mean, you still need to manage and organize your information. Our first instinct when we went in a distributed workforce was to harden the security. So IT put a lot of effort in encrypting, hardening security, double multi-factor authentication, but you still need to manage information. Actually, I would say that the problem is more acute now. Why? Because now people is in their own bubble and they do their own work. Now we need to make sure that collaboration is enforced by good information management practices, that everybody's on the same page in terms of metadata model, security model, that the search engine and the indexing engine is able to go through the documents and is pull out the words in order to be findable again. So if anything, we actually make the problem more acute, and is more than ever necessary that we organize and understand our own information, how we create information, our business process, in order to bring actually an opportunity to bring some of those processes that when we were back at the office were paper traveling through different desks, and now we bring them to digital, but not because we scanned them and made them PDF, but because we managed it, we put workflow, we put audit trail, we actually could report on it, and we could create metadata model that then in the future we could use for intelligent and analytics. So let's start with baby steps, and let us start the foundation of our information ecosystem. If we then want to start running to artificial intelligence and analytics.
Yeah, I think you made a good point there. A lot of the discussions that we have with customers at the moment, often consent and records management actually isn't a priority or is lower on the priority list, mainly because they see it as there's other challenges that they're facing that's more immediate. But ultimately, it acts as kind of the fundamentals for any digital transformation or changes that they want to apply. If they have the rules, as you've mentioned, or the parameters set in place, anything new or additional that they do on top of that will be compliant and will also enable collaboration to be a lot smoother. Just before we wrap up, I just probably would like to ask you both one last thing in regards to what's one tip or one piece of advice that you will get or commonly give to organizations just in regards to getting started on this journey or tackling the document or records management application to their businesses?
Yeah, I think this is in a way could be an exercise of self-reflection, right? In which you actually need to understand how you actually interact with the information, and the best way and the way that everybody recognizes and that you could put a business case in front of the board to take the decision to fund the project is actually to find these efficiencies, to find these tools like, for example, ELO, in order to start to put some sort of a structure. So you start with your taxonomy, your security model, your metadata model, and from there you could perhaps, as Tom was saying, you start with little steps, perhaps digitizing a process like employee files with retention schedule. So the life cycle after the employee have left the organization 7 years after whatever that period is, you could actually dispose it and put the organization in a defensible position to manage their information. So these are, and have this conscious of now we live in a digital era, and more than ever is important that we start to transform in these attitudes and these processes that used to be heavily paper-based into digital processes, and you do that by managing your infrastructure, unstructured content through a document management system, and then you add these layers of record management, so you make sure that you are in compliance and you're managing your life cycle, no hoarding information.
Yeah, and I'm probably going to end up repeating myself and almost a bit of what Gio said, but it's keep it simple all the way, break it down into manageable chunks. Within an organization, it's often, I found, easier to start with the corporate areas, the finance and the legal team and the HR team, get them sorted out first. No, if you try to workshop a BCS, I've seen organizations that the workshops go on for years because you'll never get everyone to agree to it. You need to start somewhere. Yeah. Get something that works, and you need to tweak it later on, that's fine, but get it started. See if people, you always get resistance. So can you start by negotiating with the user and say, okay, I'm hearing what you're saying. Can we try and use what we've got for a few months, see what works, what doesn't work? And by then, a lot of the initial complaints will have died down, and then you can move on and build from there. And similarly because Gio mentioned workflow functionality, I've worked with organizations where they want to immediately build the most complex workflows within a document management system. And I say, well, can we take the opportunity first to can we draw your your entire process on a piece of paper first, because if we can't do that, I don't want to start throwing it into the system. And that's a real opportunity there, just to get things a bit simpler first, to identify, well, maybe we have overcomplicated things over the years. But what I always say, the perfect is the enemy of the good. You got to start somewhere and start small.
Thank you both. So just to summarize, just some really good nuggets and key takeaway from today's discussion is, one, SharePoint is great and definitely useful. Just be aware that you're not treating it like the new network drive equivalent. Also, the second point probably is a proper content management system can do a lot in reducing challenges around individual information silos, IP loss, and change management. And the third key takeaway from this session is that a digital transformation strategy with experts such as Tom and Gio applying industry compliance and governance can really help address your content management gaps, while you focus on what you're good at and what your core business products and services are. So on the screen, you'll see there's a QR code, and this QR code links to a digital readiness assessment that we offer our customers and offer organizations, just to get an understanding on where they sit in regards to their organization's digital maturity. And often we're able to provide some benchmarking in regards to how you sit in comparison to other organizations in your industry. So feel free to scan that or click through on the link, and you'll be able to complete that quick survey. It's only 10 questions. And in the next slide is just a thank you to Tom from ELO Digital Office and Gio from Konica Minolta. They're both amazing and extremely knowledgeable experts in the field. Feel free to reach out to them on LinkedIn or via email. And it was amazing having you both in this chat. Thank you, everybody. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out or throw them in the Q&A, and we'll reach out personally just to answer your questions. Otherwise, have a lovely day, everybody.
Thank you, Leti.
Thank you.
Giving shape to ideas. Konica Minolta.